Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Be'in podcast. I hope you guys are ready for what is about to come over the next hour, because my two guests that I had join me today were none other than Rabbi and Rebbetzin Mayer from the Tiferet Seminary. Rabbi and Rebbetzin Mayer have been in the seminary world for over 20 plus years, and trust me, they have so much experience and so much knowledge to share. The topic that we decided to focus on today is why seminary girls need to cultivate a relationship with the Rabbi and Rebbetzin in their year in Israel. If you guys looked at our previous podcasts a year ago, I did an episode with Rabbi Glantz from Mevaseret on the topic of why you need a Rebbe. That episode happened to be focused primarily on yeshiva guys and the ways in which they go about that in their year in Israel. That exact relationship is very different for seminary girls, as you guys will hear in this episode. And that is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring in these two amazing people to discuss all about that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. If you enjoy this episode, please share it with somebody that you know that can benefit from the things that we discussed in this episode. Without further ado, it's time to meet my guests, Rabbi and Rebbetzin Mayer. Enjoy. Welcome to the Israel Gap Year Be'in podcast. I'm your host, Avi Proctor, and in each episode, we get Be'in in depth into the remarkable lives of individuals in Israel who dedicate themselves to inspiring the next generation of Klal Yisrael. Let's do it. Rabbi and Rebbetzin Mayer, welcome to the
Shalom
Israel Gap Year studio,
Hi.
which is kind of my apartment, as you see from here.
Beautiful apartment.
Thank you. This one, obviously, we've been in touch over the past few days, and I've very much been looking forward to this one. Obviously, you're somebody that I've seen for many, many years through working with Israel Gap Year, and now I get to meet your wife, and I'm sure she has a lot to say as well. So just thank you, obviously, for coming and taking the time today, while all your tummy dote are enjoying their chevronship. So the topic for today, obviously, that people could see from the title, is talking about the importance of having a relationship with a Rebbe, a Rebbetzin, specifically seminary focused. I had an episode about a year ago that came out with Rabbi Glantz from Mevaseret titled "Why You Need a Rebbe," and that was from the yeshiva guy perspective. So there's a lot that I want to dive into today.
Yeah.
However, probably one of my favorite parts of every episode is about yourself, not necessarily the topic. So give a little bit of background. Obviously, you could choose who talks first, of how you guys got here today. How you met, obviously, because that's
I think that's how it goes.
Good one. Obviously, you've been working within the seminary space for a while, both of you guys, to a certain extent.
27 years, 26 years.
26, yeah.
Years.
There you go. So give me a little bit of a background. Give the viewers who don't know who you are a little bit of background, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, so we're both from Toronto, Canada. We both grew up, raised in the similar communities, not far from each other. And you can go first.
What, how we met? Or
No, just
okay.
background.
The whole life story. Let's hear.
If we're here with seminary girls, so you want to hear how we met.
Then they definitely want to hear how we
Good
met.
talk.
We met when we were very, very young. Too young, probably.
I was 15, she was 14. We met at Bnei Akiva Shabbaton.
Like many shidduchim.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. A lot of hakarat tov to Bnei Akiva for introducing us.
Absolutely.
And went out kind of throughout high school. Then Ellie came to yeshiva for the year.
I went to BMT.
Shraga now.
Right, I love a shalom. Right now, we're Chart Shragas. And
then I came the next year, and Ellie was still here, Shana Bet. And kind of over the summer between those years, he was working on himself, growing, changing, kind of trying to focus on what his direction would be. And no?
yeah, I thought I was perfected before, but okay, yeah.
And he was like, okay, I want certain things in my life. I don't know if you have those things. So we should probably just be friends. And I was like, and I knew that we were going to be together. I knew I had already met my husband 6 years earlier. So I was like, I just thought to myself, okay, well, we're not friends, but okay, whatever. I'll just stay quiet. Then over the next few months of his Shana Bet and my Shana Aleph, we weren't really speaking to each other because I said, we're not friends. That's not our relationship.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, he was pretty upset about that. But I kind of knew what needed to be done. And then when I came back at the end of the year, just to wrap it up, we spoke right when I came home and when I went back to Chutz La'aretz rather. And it was pretty obvious that we wanted the same things in life. We were looking for the same type of home, and we wanted to raise our children in the same way. And then we wanted to get married. Then it took us another whole year to convince our parents that a 18, 19-year-old are not too old, not too young to get married. And we got married.
It worked out.
Came back a year later.
So we got married. We graduated from University in Toronto, not of Toronto, but University in Toronto. And then a year later, almost on our anniversary.
On our first anniversary.
With a 3-month-old, we made Aliyah. Baruch Hashem. We've been here ever since.
That's amazing. And I know obviously you guys are in Ramat Beit Shemesh now. And before we got on air, you were talking about how you live in Mal Dafna. Going back to that time period, right?
Yeah.
When you're 18, 19, you obviously know each other. You're, kind of in the process of hopefully getting married. Back then, what did you envision for yourself? Meaning, if I would have told you then what you would be doing now, what would you have told me?
It's interesting because from my perspective, I'll hear from Melanie after, but from my perspective, my life was almost pretty much mapped out in my Shana Bet year. I think it kind of started forming in Shana Aleph, and really Shana Bet was really concretized and really formulated in a very clear sense about what I want to accomplish, what are my goals. Concurrent to my Shana Bet experience, one of my best friends, unfortunately, Adi Stanley Zichrono Libracha, was sick with leukemia. And I think that really helped me focus on what I want to accomplish. I realized life is short. You don't know how long we have here. I want to make the most of it. What are they going to say about me, at my Hesped? What I want to accomplish? What are my goals? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How do I go about accomplishing them and get to it? And that was really it. So basically, Baruch Hashem, we wasted no time on accomplishing all those things. And one after the other, we got to Baruch Hashem checklist.
That first of all, that's
great.
Obviously, it's a great snippet right there that I could clip right there. But it's that motivation of having that every single day is not something that everybody has. So it's
yeah, especially in those days. In 90, it was 93, 94, right, and 95 Shana Bet. So coming to Israel wasn't so easy then. It's there was no FaceTime, there was no phone calls were about $1 a minute, and we had no family here. In fact, when we made Aliyah and we came, we were renting an apartment in Mal Dafna. And we didn't know anybody to sign as a guarantor to our rental contract. I went to Schul's just randomly. I was like, would you mind signing this for me, to random people on the street? So
did you get someone?
What?
Well, what ended up happening? Who did you get?
We got an apartment. We got random people.
Well, yeah, my father had a friend who he had spoken to a few times, and that friend brought someone else with him to the bank to sign for us. But when we chose a neighborhood, we were looking where to live, and we chose Malat Afna because of Ramachlis. We didn't know that there were other young couples that were living there. That was a bonus after we moved in.
Yeah.
We had
basically
no idea.
like he was our family in Eretz Yisrael. Like he was our Rebbe, and we wanted to be near him and wanted to.
I called the Rebbetzin, like, how do I say baking soda? And she's like, Melanie, I have 9 children. I'm trying to get to school. I was like, I'm really, really sorry, Rebbetzin. She's like, okay, call me back. I'm going to give you all the information. And yeah, they were like our parents, helping us.
Yeah, it was very special.
Obviously, there's many more things in your life that I want to touch on, but specifically, as we were speaking before, you've mentioned how much of an influence Rav Machlis and the family have had on you. So kind of like, for those that might be listening that don't know who they are, kind of tell us a little bit about them and kind of what role they played in him making who you are.
So in short, Rabbi Rebbetzin Mayer, I think they're both from Brooklyn. They both born and raised. Reb Machlis, he went to Torah Vadas. Rebbetzin Mayer, she went to Central High School. And very unique. Reb Machlis was brought in a more yeshivish home, yeshivish background. His father, a rabbi of a yeshiva. And he kind of, forged his own path and really his own identity in the world of Hashkafa and Torah. And basically when I met him, so my year in Israel, so he must have been, 40s? Maybe
late 30s, maybe.
Something like that. And
Yocheved told me
so I wasn't such a great kid. I was, I think the first time I went to a shir was already like end of October. I think that was my first year. I think
it was later because I got the first letter was mid-November. You're
maybe
like,
even
I
later.
think I'm starting.
Letters. Wow, you even did that.
Fun story. So between and Nasser made Shuva, Michael Jackson. Right, he was playing in Tel Aviv. And I was like, I'm going to this concert, and the Rosh Yeshiva was like, no one's allowed to go to the concert. I'm like, well, I'm not missing this concert. I went to the concert, and after that, they were like, well, I think we have to kick you out now. And I was like,
because you're not allowed to go, and you went.
Right, I guess it was worth it. And then my parents were begging me, please, Ellie, stay, please. And they were like, okay, we'll let him stay. But number one, he can't go to the concert tomorrow night. Number two, he has to start going to Minyan. And number three, start going to Shir. So if he commits to that, we'll let him stay. So I had to think about it. And a man I haven't met at the moment, but I met him right then, Rabbi Eiser, Zichrono Livracha, a gadol, one of the most amazing people I've ever met. Certainly had a huge hashpah on me. So he spoke to me in a very warm and loving way, and just something about him seemed like, wow, this is unusual. I've never met a rabbi with this exuding such warmth. So I thought, you know what? Okay, maybe I'll give this yeshiva thing a try. So they let me stay, and that's when I started going to Shir, and that's when I met Rav Machlis. And then I was like, wow, I've never seen a rabbi like this. This rabbi was not like the other rabbis. No beard. He's wearing, a nice colorful shirt and tie, modern suit. I was like, I've never seen a rabbi like this. This is interesting.
You take after him pretty nicely.
I try. And also the way he spoke and his authenticity and his warmth and his idealism was so amazing. And I was really taken by him. And then he always invited his students for Shabbat. So I was like, okay, me and my friend were like, okay, we'll go to our rabbi's house for Shabbat. We had no idea what to expect. We just assumed, going to our rabbi's house for Shabbat. So we come and they give us something to eat. We come Friday afternoon. It's so nice. They sit us down. They serve us. You shouldn't go into Shabbat hungry. And then we go to shul together. We come back. We walk in. And all of a sudden, there's like 20 people there. And then more people come. And then there's another 20. And then another 20. Another 20. It was like literally about 80 people at the table. And I was like, holy cow, my friends and I were just staring at each other in disbelief. And all of a sudden, there's a knock on the door. And there's another like 20, 30 people at the door. You already just started Kiddush. And Ramachla says, come in, there's plenty of room. And my friend and I looked at us, just started laughing. Like there was literally not a spot available. All the seats were taken. Maybe it was like around 100 people, 80 to 100 people sitting down. There was no space. It was a small, little, tiny Malot Zafna apartment. And so we just laughed. And so as he's walking by me to greet the people, he whispers in my ear, he goes, daven with me that the wall should expand. I was like, yeah, okay, Rabbi, right? So I was like, okay, so a little tefillah. And the people came in. He goes, come in, there's plenty of room. And they all had a seat. And my friends and I were just like, we couldn't get over it. So I went up to him after. I said, Rebbe, I didn't call him Rebbe then, Rabbi, how did that happen? Okay, you got to explain this to me. I'm a rational person, please. So he said, when there's love, there's room. He says, if you have enough love, you'll always find room. And there's always been enough room in the Machlis home. And they always find time for everybody. And I saw that their house was literally open. Like a teaching of Yihi Beitzcha Patuach Lirvacha. Your house should be open wide for everybody, Lirvacha, and to include all different types of people. Like Rav Kook said about the tent of Avraham. So it's open on all sides. Now, what kind of home do you want open on all sides? What kind of tent is a tent that's open on all sides? Because there's the East Coast people, the West Coast people, the Canadians, right? The Floridians, the Texans, right? Europeans. Let them all. They're all welcome. All different types of people from all over. They're all welcome. Everyone fits into the Machlis home. And Yihuanim B'nei Beitzcha was also something that he lived, that the poor should be like the children of your home. I never saw anybody live these ideals that I've learned in high school, Pirkei Avot, but they lived it. Literally, I would be there on any given day, and poor people, literally homeless people would come walk into their house, make themselves a sandwich, and walk out.
Sleeping on their couch, right? Drunks, people,
drug addictions, people who were just struggling in life. And then once he went into his car, he had this big van, like jalopy, and it was broken down van. It was always breaking down. And once he went in there, and there was a person living there. So I said, Rebbe, what's going on? So he said that he saw this homeless person on the street in Yerushalayim, and he said, like, how are everything okay? Shalom, how's everything? And they were talking, and Rav Machlis said to him, listen, I have 14 children. I don't have any space in my home for you to live, but no one's living in my car right now. And he said, really? Thank you so much. And the guy lived in his car for, I think, over 2 years. And the story is told that once Rav Machlis comes into the car one morning, and he sees like 11 pairs of shoes lined up on the dashboard. And he said to the guy, where'd you get 11 pairs of shoes? And he said, I hope you didn't mind. I invited some friends over last night. So I was taken by, like, this to me was Rav and Rebbetzin Mayer were the Avram Avinu and Sarah Imeinu of our generation. I said, if you could, transport Avram Avinu and Sarah Imeinu to the 2000s, there they were. And I was like, this is the real deal. This is the ideal of Torah. This is the ideal Torah life. This is the real life of chesed. A person who lives and breathes chesed, always with enough love and patience and giving to people. I once asked him, Rebbe, what's your dream? What's your goal in life? So first he says, to learn how to tap dance. I was like, that's awesome, by the way. But besides tap dancing, I said, why tap dancing? He says, I don't really know any good shtick. Okay, number two. He says, number two is to share everything that I have in the world with everybody in the world. Right? I was like, okay, this is my Rebbe. And that changed my life. He was able to give me answers to questions that I didn't find at other places. So yeah, that's really what set me on that course.
And do you have any stories of anything that you feel like, Rebbetzin Mayer?
A lot. Rebbetzin Mayer just exuded such a warmth and compassion, and you feel like you're talking to your mother when you'd speak to her, and you'd come into the home and she would greet you like you were one of her children. She would hug you like the way I hug my son when he comes home from the army. And that's how she treated each person who came into her home. And I felt so much love from her. Like, she really genuinely loved me. And she was able to impart that in such a way that was so inspiring. I used to watch her with her children. I would actually go to a shir that Rebbetzin Mayer also went to, a shir with Rebbetzin Altiski that was in Malatzafna. And Rebbetzin Altiski always said, bring your children with you. We want you to make the shir, welcoming to everyone. And it was a Sunday morning shir. And Rebbetzin Mayer would bring like 3, 4, 5 children with her, whoever was home at the time. And to watch her with her children and just this bottomless patience, like not ever losing her cool with her children when this one was fighting with that one, or that one wanted to run to the other side of the room. And she just was always calm with her children. And I watched her and in awe, thinking, if I could just take a little bit of that patience and just keep calm the way she did, like, I would be such an amazing mother, just if I could be a little bit of what she was. It was really, really inspiring to me. And to see them together, like at a Shabbat meal, the way they complemented each other. Reb Machlis would be giving a Dvar Torah, and Rebbetzin Mayer always had what to add to the Dvar Torah. She knew a lot of Torah also. She always added to what he was saying. And to be raising their children with so much love at the same time that all this chesed was going on for so many other people, so many nebuch people, so many downtrodden people who did not get love from anyone else, but the Machlises just gave it to them and still do.
It reminds me of the story when unfortunately Rebbetzin Mayer passed away. So I took Tiferet to Menachem Avel. So we come to Malatzafna, all of Tiferet's getting off the bus, and these 2 Israeli women, dressed as, let's say, not openly observant people. And they said, excuse me, in Hebrew, do you know where the Henny Machlis Shiva is? So I said, sure. And I said, we're going there also. They said, oh, you're all going? I was like, yeah, we're going to visit Rabbanit Machlis for the Shiva. And she said to us, Rebbanit? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, oh, she's Henny. What do you mean Rebbanit? I don't know. I was like, she's Rebbanit, she's a great Rebbetzin. And they're like, really? She's just my best friend's Henny. Right? And I realized that Rebbetzin Mayer, to everyone, to all these people, for thousands and thousands of people from all over the world, she was their best friend. So it wasn't just like a rabbi. It reminds me of a very beautiful teaching Reb Machlis once said. It says in Pirkei Avot, "Tasei lecha rav uknei lecha chaver." Right? Make yourself a Rav, have a Rebbe, a Rebbetzin, and acquire yourself a friend. Then there's a whole Torah to why Asei lecha Rav and Knei lecha Chaver, why acquire a friend, make yourself a rabbi. Well, it should be the other way around, if anything. And but Rav Machlis once said to me, he says that maybe the teaching is not 2 separate teachings, maybe it's one and the same. That really, ideally, your Rav should also be your friend. And Rebbetzin Mayer was really that, right? She made everyone feel like she was your best friend. Not just she was like your Rebbetzin, but she was your friend, she was in your corner, and no matter how much time she had, no matter how much she was giving to everyone else in the world, literally 24/7, she made you feel like she had all the time in the world for you.
Wow. And first of all, all those stories, I think, honestly, I could take this entire outline ahead,
chuck it out the door and we can talk about the machlokas for the next hour.
Totally
trust
could.
me, we could do that. We'd have
Many
Part-
episodes of
Part 2 with the mayors will do it. You know,
You know what? One of our biggest hesitations of moving to Ramat Beit Shemesh was exactly that. In fact, one of the big debates when we were about to start Tiferet, one of the hesitations that we had was that if we're starting Tiferet, so we have to be here in Ramat Beit Shemesh. That's part of the concept of Tiferet. But I knew by doing that, I would be not living Ma'alat Zafna. And I was like, I had such a zechut, such an opportunity. We had such an opportunity to live in such close proximity to the Machlis family and be close. And I would learn with him daily, have chavrutas with him, drop over for Sudah Shlishi to hear his Torah. And that type of closeness, I was really sacrificing. We had to really, really think very carefully about that.
1,000%. And I'm sure you did. And you just made me think about it. The book that was written about Rebbetzin Machas was Chicken Soup for the Soul.
And Emunah in Love with.
That
right?
Emunah with love and
Emunah
chicken
with
soup.
love
that
and
was
chicken soup. Yeah.
Complete netter. If anybody wants to read that book, I'll put a link in the bio
Highly
for all of this. You actually channeled perfectly into the topic kind of that we're talking about today. Like obviously, the Machlis are key people in your life from a Rabbi and Rebbetzin perspective. And that's obviously the topic that we want to, talk about today. And let's start from ground zero, square one, right? There's a lot you both have to share and speak about the relationship that yeshiva and seminary students have, but we're going to talk specifically in terms of seminary girls with a rabbi or a rebbetzin. So from the baseline, what is in your mind, both of your minds, the benefit of having a relationship with a rabbi and rebbetzin, and kind of how can a student who, let's say, is in seminary, and let's say somebody's listening to this and is coming to seminary next year that's never had a relationship with a rabbi or rebbetzin, how can you begin to cultivate that? And in your mind, what's your pitch essentially to make somebody say, I do want to have someone like that in my life?
Okay, well, we just spoke about how formative that relationship I had with Rav Machlis was in my year and a half in Eretz Yisrael and till this day. And it wasn't just in the year and a half in yeshiva, because it was after, even though there wasn't WhatsApp and stuff like that, and the phone calls were expensive, but I would call Rav Machlis at least once a week, even if it just got his answering machine, just hear his voice, it would jolt me a little bit psychologically back to my year to remind me where I was. And so that kept us going. I mean, we weren't there in Chutz La'aretz that long. How long were we there?
Well, the first year we were engaged, 2 years.
2 years in Chutz La'aretz. And it really kept us attached. So that connection, even just hearing his voice, just asking a shaila or asking for a Dvar Torah, or it's just any connection. Even sometimes I would have to just make up a shaila just to have that connection, really kept us tied to Eretz Yisrael, tied to that memory of where I reached spiritually, the level that I was and where I wanted to get to when I was in my year and a half in Eretz Yisrael. And I realized from there how vital that relationship was to getting us to Eretz Yisrael, to getting us to keep to where the levels we wanted to meet, to reach, and to continue to reach our goals. That relationship was integral to that. So I realized when I started teaching in seminaries, the girls don't really have that to the same extent, at least not then. Baruch Hashem, I think things have changed over the last few decades, but unfortunately, I think that it was much more common in those days that there were students who would leave their year in seminary without any connection to a rabbi, and sometimes not to a rebbetzin either. I think Melanie had a similar experience. And we saw very often that they had a yerida much more often than the boys. And I attribute that, I could be wrong, but I attribute that at least partially to the fact that the boys had a closer relationship with the Rebbe, and the girls didn't really have that.
It was natural for the boys to call their Rebbe, just because, I guess, the same gender, it was natural for a boy to feel very close to his Rebbe and to be able to speak to him and talk to him about whatever. And if, let's say, a girl has a close relationship with her rabbi, if she's not connected to his wife, then there becomes this natural distance that, of course, you want to have. But at the same time, it's more challenging for her to feel close, to ask a question, and it's really a challenge. We were fortunate that we had Rebbetzin Machlis as well as Rav Machlis, and I used to ask her questions about all different types of topics all the time. Sometimes she would just give me the halachot because she knew them. Sometimes she would say, I'm not sure, let me speak to Mordechai. But sometimes it was really, really important to be able to have that. And I think over the years of Tiferet, I see that the students that have kept in touch with both of us, I think it's been a closer relationship, and it's also been more helpful, I think, for those students. I just see where they are. I mean, of course, I don't know exactly what is going on in anyone's life, but I see the questions that they're asking and the things that they're important for them, their priorities, the decisions that they're trying to make. The fact that they're asking those questions show that they still want to have that relationship and why it's important to them, and how they're raising their children, please God, the ones who are not married, how they, the ways that they decide who to go out with and what they're looking for, and how their future is going to be, where they're going to end up. That's actually why I took a Madrichat Kala course through the Rabbanut about 5 years ago, because I felt like this is something I need to know how to do, because I had students asking me, Ellie students were asking me questions, and I didn't have the answers for them. I was like, oh, I'll ask Ellie, I'll find out, I'll try to do the research. I was like, I need to know how to do this. And then since then, all of the kalot that I've taught were his former students.
Yeah, it was very beautiful. I think one of her first students, one of her first kalot, was a student from Tiferet, second or third year of Tiferet. Tiferet's, we're in our 20th year. I think it was our third year of Tiferet. And Baruch Hashem, she got married, moved to Eretz Yisrael, and
has
had
a family.
Boy. And so we were invited to the Brit. Not invited, we went to the Brit, and I was the one who was given the privilege of naming the baby. Melanie was her Kala teacher, and still to this day, so many years later, they come to our house, they stay with us.
And
so
she asks both of us different questions,
Right,
depending on what the
right.
topic is. Yeah.
Right, and so I was like, that is exactly what we wanted to create. That's what we wanted to give to female students.
I think that's a beautiful point. And obviously I got to give a shout out, and I don't talk about my personal life so much on this podcast, but Rabbi and Rebbetzin Schneider, Rebbetzin Schneider is a key part of Tiferet. Baruch Hashem, they are, the Rabbi and Rebbetzin of my wife and I, and they've taught us so much, and, I've had them on this podcast.
I know Rabbi Schneider since high school.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk about that
Another
time. Thinking to, obviously cultivating a relationship for a seminary girl might be challenging sometimes, right? So to hear both of your perspectives on this is, do you think that it's more that since girls, in your opinion, don't cultivate that relationship so much, is it because they don't want to, or they don't know how to? Where do you think that kind of stems from, that lack of leaving Israel with that real connection to someone?
Want to go first?
I think it doesn't occur to them necessarily unless their rabbis have been talking about it, that it's important to continue. So it won't occur to them that they can have this opportunity as well. Like, they just think because they're female, they don't have that opportunity. So if their rabbis are talking to them about it, like, it's important to stay connected to your rabbi, to your rebbetzin, to someone who's been your educator, someone who's been formative for you. Stay in touch with them. If they have never heard that, then it just won't occur to them. And once they end up with their own questions, things that they really need to know practically and philosophically, then if they decide to reach out, then it's really, the ball is really in their court, though, because you can't possibly have a rabbi of hundreds of students reaching out to all of his students and keeping up that relationship. It's up to them.
I think it's really about creating a safe environment. Yes. I think that a seminary, and I'm sure all the seminaries do this today, but creating a very boundaried environment and creating very clear boundaries of the relationship between the rebbeim and the students is vital. First of all, for the protection of the staff, protection of the rebbeim themselves, and for protection of the students. And then once the girls see this is a very boundary place, and that, wow, I can feel comfortable and safe having a boundaried relationship, and therefore they can enter that relationship without having that sense of vulnerability or concern or uncomfortableness. So I think that is first and foremost, creating, and that is vital. That is like the foundation. But once you have that, then there's a gisha. Then there's, okay, you know what? This is something that I can entertain. This is something I could look into. And I think secondly is that it's not so much that it's not really part of the Orthodox world culture yet of, having that close relationship with rebbeim. And I think it's because for many years, decades ago, I don't think they were careful or they knew about the boundaries. Those issues were not yet come to the fore, were not yet exposed yet. And I think now everyone's much, much more aware of how vital and important that is. And I think, therefore, now seminary students are starting to have those relationships because they see those boundaries in place. So that was like the first and most important thing, because otherwise the girls will feel too scared, too nervous.
You know, a point that I want to touch on that you said a second ago is that teachers have sometimes hundreds of students, and the ball's not in their court to reach out to the students, right? So, and I think we were talking about this yesterday on the phone, is a common thing that's a little bit challenging for girls less than guys is that, you know, they're interacting with so many different teachers during the day. So when you're like going from this class to this class, whatever, and you're not with that consistent person, it might be harder to find that person you really connect to. So kind of take me through that process and kind of like, what's your guidance to seminary girls?
Yeah, so when we were living in Mount Daphna, so Melanie's rabbi, Melanie went to Machon Gold, a great, one of the great educators in Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Borstein. To this day, he's the rabbi of a high school in Yerushalayim, really special tzaddik and an incredible educator. He also taught in BMT. So when I was learning in Kollel after we got married, so basically he called me, he's like, I need a sub, do you mind coming in? I was like, okay. I had no plans at that point to going into teaching. I was actually working.
He was here learning.
I was working part-time for Eisha Torah in the summers, and like I was involved in Kiruv. I was the rabbi at Hebrew University unofficially with Jeff Seidel, like that type of thing. And I loved that. That was really special. So my first experience was teaching seminary at this place called Machon Gold, subbing, and then they asked me to stay on. And then kind of one thing led to another, and I started being there more full-time. Full-time in seminary world doesn't mean you're there every day. It means you're there for a few hours here and there. So I started teaching there. And there was a job opening, and I knew, and Melanie knew from Toronto, Mrs. Pesha Rosner. Pesha, before she got married, was Pesha Marcus. Rabbi Rafal Marcus, Zichrono Livracha, was the rabbi of my shul in Toronto, and Pesha Rosner is his daughter. And so we knew each other growing up, but Melanie and Mrs. Rosner, so they were in high school together for a few years before she moved. Mrs. Rosner is a granddaughter of Rav Soloveitchik Zatzal. So she move to Chicago to live with her grandparents. And anyway, so I knew there was a spot available, and I was also started to teach at Reshit at nights, and I knew this other guy, Rabbi Israel Rosner, and I knew he was a genius. He was unbelievable. He was a huge Talmud Chacham. I said to Rabbi Borstein, I was like, you got to get this guy. They hired him. So Rabbi Rosner and I started teaching together in Machon Gold, and so we were both teaching at Reshit. So we started to carpool together back and forth, and in our drives back and forth, 45 minutes there and back. So we would have discussions about the differences between the seminary experience and the yeshiva experience. And it wasn't something that was really a secret. It was something that was very clear and obvious that, number one, it was a very different experience. The girls had 20 to 30 different classes throughout the weekly schedule, 20 to 30 different teachers throughout the week schedule. There was a lot of once-a-week classes, twice-a-week classes. You come, teach a class, leave. I taught at one point in 3 different seminaries in the afternoon.
And a yeshiva at the same time.
Yeshiva. So I was at Reshit in the morning Seder and night Seder. And then the afternoon, I was in Machon Gold, Minjasha Moriah, Minjasha Lindebom. All great places. But again, I was coming in, giving a class or two a week, and then leaving. And I didn't even know my students' names. This is way back when. I'm sure things have changed. But I didn't really know my students' names until several months in. And even by January, there were students' names that I didn't get yet because
if they came to us for a Shabbat, we got to know them. But otherwise,
but again, my priority was my yeshiva guys. So if we're having Shabbat guests, so the priority would be to Reshit, where I'm teaching every single day from 9 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon, and then again at night Seder for every single day. So the girls, I didn't have that connection with them, didn't have that relationship. And often I would see they would kind of want to discuss something that was brought up in class or talk about a certain issue they were having in a Muna or whatever it may be. And I couldn't because
you always had one foot out the door.
Yeah,
you
I had
literally
to
had
my
to
next
get your
place.
next class.
I didn't live anywhere near there. And the girl would say, oh, can we have a chavrutza or something? I'm sorry, I live 45 minutes away. I'm not going to come for a half-hour chavrutza. It just wasn't practical. So the girls there wasn't the opportunity for the students to forge those relationships with the teachers, even if there was such a safe environment. And we realized that was one of the biggest issues that we felt was in the seminary world at that time. We're talking about, late 90s, early 2000s, a long time ago. But way pre-Tiferet. But also, the seminary experience has changed so dramatically since then. And it's really remarkable because I just felt that with the most important and maybe one of the most fundamental aspects of religious growth in the year in Israel is that kesher with the Rebbe, and the girls were lacking that. And I really felt that made a big difference, not just in the year experience, but post. And I think that was why eventually, that and a few other things also, but that was the primary reason, our impetus for starting Tiferet.
I'm curious to hear any of your thoughts on that.
It seemed once they talked about it and decided they wanted to do it, it was so obvious. Like how did nobody think of this before? Like it became such an obvious thing to do a seminary in the community where the teachers actually live. Because I remember when I was in seminary, I would want to speak to my teachers, but they were always, it was like 12:45. They'd be rushing to drive the 45 minutes back to where they lived to pick up their kids from Gan or from school. They just didn't have the time. Even if they wanted to, they didn't have the time to speak to their students. And the students just wanted to keep speaking to them. It would end up being one Shabbat out of, the whole year that you would stay up late talking to your teacher if you happened to sleep at their house for Shabbat, if you were lucky enough to get that spot. And it was just such a rare occurrence to be able to forge that relationship. So once they decided they wanted to do it, it seemed like such an obvious thing to do.
Well, I wasn't sure we would get any students, but
And it worked out
but
well.
then, Baruch Hashem, in our first year, we had like over 225 applicants, I think. We were blown away. But it reminded me, as Melanie was talking, it reminded me that in the very beginning, when we were still living in Ma'alat Dafna, and we were involved in what people call kiruv, I'm still looking for kiruv myself, and I got asked to speak, I think it was the first birthright. And they asked me to speak to a group of college-age students who've never been to Israel before, who weren't yet, openly connected to Torah. And so I spoke to them, and there were two students, who were the young ladies who were there, ended up coming to us for Shabbat, staying after birthright. And then
they stayed for a couple of weeks with us.
They ended up staying in our home for a couple of weeks, and Baruch Hashem, they all became, completely, openly, externally Torah observant. And we realized just the power of having your Talmidim in your home. There's something about, okay, it's great in the yeshiva, it's great in the Beit Midrash, it's great in the classroom, but there's nothing. I think you can accomplish more in a Friday night dinner than you can in 6 weeks of yeshiva, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, keep going.
I think, maybe Machal said this to me once, but I think it's true. I would venture to guess that at least 90% of what a guy or girl learns in their year in Israel, they don't remember. I would say even more than that. But what stays? What sticks with them? What makes the biggest roshem? What really changes them? What really, do they remember 5, 10, 15, 20 years later? They remember the connection with the Rebbe. They remember that demut, that personality that they had, that connection. And that is really, I think, what stays with more than anything else. And that's why the Shabbat experience, having them at the Shabbat table, having your schmoozes with them. And we saw that in the years of Tiferet when, girls coming every Shabbat and then staying for hours and schmoozing. Once we had a famous meal, like one of the first years of Tiferet, and there was
one of the girls at the table actually was the shadchanit for one of our children, Baruch Hashem.
That's right. And this group of students, and they stayed talking to us, asking us shilas and questions and advice, like pretty much until like the next morning. We
were all chalavi by the end of the meal.
And it was, that night was like the most formative experience of their year in Israel. So to me, that's what was really needed the most, and I think till this day. So when I talk to either boys or girls who are going to the Year in Israel experience, that's my biggest advice. Don't wait to a comfort level to make that relationship. Be a little forward. Realize that this is an opportunity that is so unique and is so special that your parents are affording you this incredible opportunity. Take advantage. And the longer you wait, the less time you have, and maybe the less time the teacher will have for you. So if you see a teacher that maybe you feel connected to, right, that maybe speaks to you, inspire you, something about them, right, connect to them, ask them shilas, ask to learn with them, right, just do anything. I remember when I started going to Ramachlis' shir, so after class, I'd walk him to his car. Once I think I just got into his car and he just drove all the way home. And I was stalking him a little bit just so I could learn more Torah. I remember in Shana Bet during Sukkot vacation, all the guys were off. But I asked Ramachal, said, do you have any time to learn with me? And he said, yeah, I'm happy to learn with you on Chol HaMoed. 6 a.m. Is that okay? And I was like, sure, yes, thank you. Right? So I had to take from the 21 Aleph, which is the BMT in Mechala, like Torah Shraga, shared a bus stop at like 4:30 in the morning or 5 a.m. to get to Malo Tafna. But it was those experiences. Until this day, it's that experience that's really is what keeps us going. And that is really what the concept of Tiferet is. And that's, I think, what every guy and girl should be focusing on in their year in Israel, wherever yeshiva, whatever seminary. Baruch Hashem, I'm been involved in the seminary world for a long time now, 26 years? Yeah. 26 years, Baruch Hashem, big privilege. And I can tell you definitively that all of the teachers, staff, the administration, who I'm very close with in other schools, they are outstanding individuals. They are outstanding tzaddikim, talmidei chachamim, and chachamot. They are remarkable people who are moser nefesh, who have sacrificed so much to give things over that they have, their experiences, their Torah, their wisdom, to these students, and given out so much. Take advantage of it. They want to give it to you. You just have to take it. Like my mother used to tell me, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? So here, you have the opportunity. Now drink, right? Drink thirstily the words, as it says in Pirkei Avot.
I could not agree more with your point. And I think like the most important thing that I think that you both just kind of agreed on and said there is what happens in terms of your growth. Probably the most effective things are what happen outside of, the base medrash, outside of your school. And speaking of the amazing meals that you have at your house, I have to give a shout out to my sister-in-law, Nava Miller. She's going to kill me for saying this, but she used to talk about how, all of her friends would go to your house and just how people get invited out to the teachers, obviously in Tiferet, but every other school. It's a molding experience. I want to twist the question though, for somebody that's not in Tiferet or is in a seminary that doesn't have the ability to just walk down the road and go to your teacher's house, and you're still in that situation where you have 20, 30 different teachers throughout the entire week. Mm-hmm. What's your advice for them of how they could develop a kesher?
Well, I think it's like what Ellie was saying about if there's someone who you feel connected to, the way they're teaching Torah is speaking to you more than other people, then you have to make that a priority for yourself. You have to tap into that time. If it means being there for a 6 a.m. chavrusa, then be there for the 6 a.m. chavrusa if that's the time that they're giving you. If they have a little bit of time, take that time. If you can go to them for a Shabbat and spend the afternoon playing with their children so that they could sleep, so that they could stay up later to talk to you at nighttime, do that if you need to. And when you leave, just be in touch with them, reach out to them, ask them the questions that you're struggling with, tell them what's going on in your life, and make sure that you get answers to the things that you're struggling with. And but it's up to you to make sure you put in the effort to make that connection.
It reminds me of the Gemara of this guy who they had a bet, could they get Hillel angry? Hillel was known for his patience, and they're like, oh, I for sure can get Hillel angry. And he would wait till Erev Shabbat when Hillel's in the shower, just so everyone's rushing to get ready for Shabbat.
The worst possible
and he's like,
time.
Hillel, I have an important question, vital question, critical. Hillel rushes out of the shower and he asks him some silly question. It's no significance whatsoever. And I feel like that's how you make a Rebbe. I don't think that's the point of the Gemara necessarily. But meaning, there was actually a guy who used to come to our house who really, he just asked one Shabbat, can he come for Shabbat? I don't even know how he got to us. But he asked, no, I think he was studying in Beit Israel. And anyway, so he said,
I thought you were talking about, okay.
And he said, I want that type of kesher with the Rebbe like you have. How do I do it? And he was in Toronto. He goes, how do I do it? So I said, just find one you connect to and then just stalk them. I don't mean that literally, by the way, just to clarify. In a healthy way. Meaning spend time with them.
In a legal way.
If they're driving somewhere and you can drive with them, they don't mind, great, do it. If they could, and he said, the guy called me, it was just last week, and he told me, he goes, I took your advice, and this rabbi I really connected to. I met him in college. And I don't know, he's giving lectures there or whatever it was. And he drives 2 hours to something once a week. And he said, can I drive you?
I became his driver.
And so he became his driver. He goes, and that's how I made that connection. Thank you very much. So I think that's what you have to do. You have to put yourself out there. You kind of have to make it happen. Listen, the Gemara says, Gedolah shimusha yoter milimudah. That's the story of Yehoshua Moshe. Right? Was Yehoshua the greatest students according to Midrash? Not really. Maybe there were other brighter students. Maybe there were who were more learned. But what was it? Is that he was the one who was coming to set up the chairs and to Now, I would like to suggest that maybe the interpretation of that Gemara is not that he was just doing chesed, he was helping, he was serving Moshe Rabbeinu, but maybe he was there hanging out with Moshe Rabbeinu in informal settings. That he was sitting there in the Beit Midrash while Moshe Rabbeinu maybe was preparing his shir, or he was walking back from the Beit Midrash to his tent, right? And that's Gedol Shimusha Yoter Milimuda. And I think everyone who has a Rebbe, a Rebbetzin, or someone great they connect to, I think can identify with that idea that you can see their greatness informally, even more so than formally. And in these small little experiences, when, I remember I learned from Ramachlis halachas of Negiah, but then I was still in Shana Bet. And then I remember watching this woman put out her hand to shake Rav Machlis's hand, Shabbat Shalom. I think she might have been a Gentile. Puts her hand out, and I was watching because, okay, I know he told me that save her from embarrassment, but how does he shake her hand? Is it a limp hand? Is it a full shake? Is it a two-hand shake? Like, how does he do it? Like something that you can't really articulate. You can't write in a sefer. It's like how many people do you know how to swim? Who know how to swim from like reading it in a book? Right? Nobody. Torah is the same. You have to see it in action. You have to see the big tzaddikim. There's something different about how they go about their life. It's living the Torah, and that you can't see in the Sefer, that you can't see in the Beit Midrash. And I think that's something that's vital. I think every student, that's something, if you're in Israel next year, that should be one of your priorities.
I think that's, by the way, you both said two fantastic points. I think, one of the main ones I'm taking from that, and hopefully everybody takes from it, is being persistent is really what's going to help you. Obviously, with anything in life, being persistent is what's going to help you, but specifically with that. And then also, don't be shy to like get on a car ride with your teacher for like an hour or two. Like, it's a very good point. I kind of want to touch on, obviously, those are tips to stay connected and build a relationship. When it comes to a seminary girl who's coming across 20 or 30 different teachers throughout their week, what are some ways or advice to identify that person or those few people out of those 20 or 30 that you could say, you know what, I do want to build a long-lasting connection with those people?
So that's a very good question. I think it has to be someone that you can connect to, not just in a way like, wow, they are inspiring, they are amazing, they're so scholarly and so wise, but someone that you can aspire to be like, or that maybe you want to be like. But in a realistic way, right? Meaning this person is so special, so unique that I want to be like that. And in some realm, really, if I could really, really look carefully down the road, maybe I could be like that. I think that's your person. And everyone connects to different people. There's one person can go to one shir and that shir is not for them. Another person can go to that shir and like that's the shir that they need to be in. I don't know if it's like a chemistry thing. Maybe that's sort of kind of the wrong word, but meaning there's a connection. You feel that connection. That there's something that clicks. Maybe it's their hashkafa. Maybe it's the way they speak. Maybe it's the light in their eyes. Maybe it's what they focus on. It's like we say in Shemona Esrei, Elokeinu v'Elokei Avotenu, Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, v'Elokei Yaakov. The question is, just say Elokei Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Why Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov? Because Abraham, his main thing was chesed. Now, of course, he learned Torah and he davens, but his main thing was chesed. Yitzchak, his main thing was tefillah. Of course, he learned and he did chesed. Yaakov, right? Of course, he did chesed. Of course, he learned, but his main thing was Torah. You have to find which of them you connect to. Each of the avot, they had their thing. They made their relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu with their thing that they specialized in. So every Rabbi, Rebbetzin, they have their thing. You'll hear it repeated in their shiurim. You'll hear recurring themes in their conversations. And if that's the one that speaks to you, chesed, Torah, davening, musar, whatever it may be, that's the one that speaks to you. So that's the one you should connect to.
Yeah, I think sometimes you don't know what it is about a person that you feel connected to, but there's just something that it's really intangible. Like, why does a person like one type of food over another type of food? It's just, it's the way that they're speaking to you, and it's tapping into something that you maybe thought about a little bit, but now that you're much more interested in, the more you learn Torah, the more you understand that there are things that you never thought about before that you really want to start to explore. And you see a person who's really emulating those ideals that you see really have been a priority to you, that you really want to make them goals for yourself. And you see a person who's actually living those goals. So like what Ellie was saying, like try to get a little bit of it. Like when I would watch Rebbetzin Mayer with her children with this boundless patience and energy and care and compassion. Do I never yell at my children? My children will tell you, of course that's not true. But sometimes can I tap into that energy on like Erev Shabbat when there's so much pressure? And I'm like, okay, remember the way Rebbetzin Mayer just lowered her voice, took a deep breath, like just like if you can one time tap into it and try to emulate the way that they are all the time, which seems unattainable, but if you can try to do that one time and then maybe a couple of times and then it becomes more habitual, then you see that this is a person who the things that they're doing, their behaviors, their lifestyle is something that you value and you can try to emulate those goals. And then that really will help you kind of narrow down who you want to feel connected to.
I think those are both great points. And honestly, like looking at the person, as you said, of do I resonate with what they say, what they like, the Torah they give over? Like, obviously, that is great advice. And I'm thinking about it. The time that this episode is going to come out there's about a month left in the year in seminary. Someone might listen to this in 6 months. They might listen to us in a year or two, whatever. But hopefully, people listen to it soon. And if there's someone in seminary right now that's listening to the advice that you're giving, it's all fantastic advice, and they're like, wow, like I've gone through the past 9 months, and I don't really feel like I'm leaving in a month from now with like a connection with someone, and I know I'm not coming back, Shana Bet. What's your advice to those students?
It's interesting. I've had students in Tiferet who maybe, I don't know, for whatever reason, we didn't have any close connection.
They weren't in any of your classes.
They were in my classes. Yeah. We didn't have a chavruta for whatever. They just didn't make a chavruta maybe with other teachers, whatever the other schedule. And for some reason, we have I send out a weekly WhatsApp of Divrei Torah and the Parsha, and maybe through that, and then they WhatsApp me. And then we kept on this WhatsApp dialogue. I think, I'm speaking to Rabbi Roser and I get daily WhatsApps, like in the tens from students.
Way more.
Shila's advice, just to connect. And sometimes it's the girls who didn't the whole year. Forget May, but meaning it's July, it's August, it's the following year. And they reach out by WhatsApp. And I think every rabbi and Rebbetzin I know and all the seminaries and yeshivas are happy to connect to alumni, even the ones that they didn't have a relationship with. So it's never too late. And I ended up becoming really close with this students who wasn't in any of my classes. Right. So I didn't have any chavruta with, who I didn't really have any close relationship. Maybe she was at my house once the whole year, but I didn't really have. That's unusual. But
she keeps asking questions.
Yeah, she keeps asking questions. She, if on my Devar Torah, she'll ask me a question on it. We have that dialogue, and it's just by WhatsApps. WhatsApp, actually, by the way, I think is an incredible resource for the purpose of forging relationships.
Wow. Do you have anything to
add? Just thinking. I don't know. I think really just the perseverance and thinking back on what inspired you. And
it just reminds me, if I may, it reminded me, I think it was one of the first years of Tiferet. So it was Monday night. Monday nights, all the seminaries have off. The girls go to hang out with their friends, the kotel, whatever it may be. And every Elul, I always get the same questions on Monday nights. Is this hechsher okay? No pun intended, right? And now they send me, photos. There's no pictures. Now the photos of the hechsher. Is this good? Is this a good hechsher? Can I eat here? Is it right? Always the same thing. I get like maybe 10 of them on the first Monday night, and every year I also get the same follow up the next day. I was out with my friends and they saw that I was WhatsApping you this question, and they're like, "That's so weird. You're just like." WhatsApp your rabbi. And I felt so good that for our student, that was just normal. That was just not something weird, not something uncomfortable or bizarre, right? That was something what they felt comfortable doing. And that is really what I was talking about. That's the idea of Asela Harav. That doesn't have to be this type of close relationship that Baruch Hashem I have. I don't think that's realistic or maybe even appropriate for a girl to have with her rabbi. But at the same time, there's still that WhatsApp, I think, it enables you to have that close connection and also the distance.
Well, I think that's a great point. And obviously, as the relationship that you were speaking about before with Rabbi Machlis was you're paying for minutes to talk on the phone, and now it's just send a little voice note. You know, I kind of want to touch on if let's say somebody left seminary a few years ago and they didn't keep that kesher, obviously, and they're like going back and forth in their mind. Do I reach out to this teacher from Israel? Do I not? You know, do I reach out to a different rabbi in my community? Like, and they need to get over that hump. What would your advice be to those students?
So there are a couple of students that I'm thinking of now that kind of were really in touch post-seminary and then just fell off just totally lost touch. And then a couple of years later, 2 years later, 5 years later, they'll see something like we had a simcha, bar mitzvah, or an engagement or something, and they'll reach out to say mazel tov. And then they'll kind of say, you know, I've been meaning to get in touch. And just use an opportunity. It's not too late. There's one student one of Ellie's students that we were both very close with, and every once in a while she'll reach out to me. She'll tell me what's going on in her life. And some of the things that she's talking to me about are so inspiring to me. I feel like she's taught me so much about being sensitive to what people are dealing with and what's going on in the world besides the young couples who are moving to our community or other communities are here for Shana Rishona or Baruch Hashem able to make Aliyah. If these students feel that they can reach out just even 5 years later, 10 years later, just send the WhatsApp. She sent the student, she sends me a message. This is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm struggling with. And it's been so eye-opening for me to hear what people are dealing with and to also be sensitive to people 5 years, 10 years, 15 years post-seminary, what their struggles are, what their challenges are. And I think it's instrumental in teaching the faculty in the schools about how they can help their students 10, 15 years down the road, really what they should be prioritizing, because you can't speak to all your students in the same way because they're not going to all have the same life 10, 15 years down the road. I think the people who are brave enough to we're so happy to hear from them. Like another student who reached out, she was here for a few years and then unfortunately she had to go to Chutz La'aretz, and she's still trying to get back. She keeps saying, I want to come back. For her, that she reached out after all those years, it was so amazing to hear from her. And I guess she was nervous to reach out the first time. Maybe she wasn't. Maybe she forgot. Whatever inspired her, whatever reminded her about us. And then she reached out, and it was just so wonderful to hear from her and to hear about what was going on in her life and that she wants to share with us. And I think for people to know that they always can 20 years later.
If I can add, I think it's actually a very important point, which is we try to encourage our students that if they're in Chutz La'aretz, especially for the long run. So we think it's important to try to make a connection in Chutz La'aretz, meaning they're not mutually exclusive. You can have your connections in Eretz Yisrael and you can have your connections locally, but I think it is really important. Now, that's even harder to do, but I think when our alumni, when they get married, so I think it's natural, and I think is usually the case where they adopt their husband's Rebbe. And we tell our students already in the year in Israel that is normal, healthy, that's wonderful. Now, there are times, and we have some of our students like that, who their husband didn't have a connection to a Rebbe, so their rabbi is her rabbi, right? So the couple's rabbi is her rabbi. But it's usually, fortunately or unfortunately, default, that it's the guy who has the closest relationship. And if that's the case, and he has an ongoing kesher with that Rebbe in Chutz La'aretz, so I think it's great that she adopts that relationship as well.
I'm glad you added that, Nakuda. It's definitely very important. My last final question to you guys, and I leave this off with every podcast guest, is obviously today we've talked about the kesher with the Rebbe and a Rebbetzin, and that's so vitally important in your life. But if you had one message in a bottle to any person that's listening to this podcast, whatever stage they're at in their life, about anything, literally about anything you want, it can be something you're passionate about, whatever that may be, what would that message be for both of you?
Oh, okay. This time of year, right? We're now in the Sphira. We're in the Yemei Avelut for the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva. And I always think about this teaching that really, I think about the entire Sphira every year, and teaching my Rebbe, Rav Machlas. And he said as follows. He says, it's no coincidence that all of the most controversial days of the year of the Jewish calendar fall out during the Sphira. Yom HaShoah is controversial to some, right? we already have a day. We have maybe Tisha B'Av, or we have Asara B'Tevet. Also, it's in Nisan. Is that okay? We have Yom HaZikaron. Do you stand for the Siren? I have a clear opinion on this. But, but to some in the Torah world, this is a controversial day. Their feelings about the state. Similarly, Yom HaTzmaut. Similarly, Yom Yerushalayim. And similarly, Lag BaOmer. Some people who don't celebrate Yom HaTzmaut because it's just a made-up holiday. Lag BaOmer also. Yeah, it was a Chatam Sofer who also had, where's the source for this? So all of the most controversial days, all of them, they all fall out within that period of time. So Rav Acha says he doesn't think it's a coincidence. At the time we're in Avilut, Shelo Nagu Kavod Zel Lazeh. They didn't show kavod to each other, right? Even if they disagreed, right? The problem was they didn't show respect for different opinions. And at a time when Am Yisrael is divided, so that's when we're weakest, and we see that in the last couple of years. That's our strength is in our unity. It's in our achdut. And this time of year, we have to remember that we have to do the tikkun to show kavod zel lazeh to even those who disagree. We're all the same. We're all in the same boat. We're all the same family, and we can disagree, and we can even disagree vociferously. We can have strong opinions, but with kavod, with love. And I think that now, especially at this time when there was just a big call-up of miluim, our son in the army, our son-in-law who's going in, and that's what we need. That's everyone who wants to know, what can I contribute to Klal Yisrael now in our time of need? That's what you can kavod. Someone disagrees, someone you don't see where they're coming from, you don't understand where they're coming from, you can't relate to them. Show kavod.
Wow. Curious to hear what you're going to say now. That was a great point, by the way. Love that one. I'm putting that in my pocket after this.
I think sometimes people feel stuck. They feel like they're in a rut and they can't get out of it. And they think that the habits that they're in right now are just the way they are. And I think we need to take each day the way it is and just remember that every single day is a new day to begin again. Even with something that you're struggling with academically, if you're like, I have too much work, I'm not going to be able to catch up, just start today. Just do a little bit that you can today. And whatever you can accomplish today, that's more than you did yesterday because it's something new that you're doing. And we can always go up from where we are. We can always work on ourselves and develop ourselves. And if you feel like there's a mitzvah that you're working on that you feel like it's really, really difficult for you, you can always decide, today I'm going to work on that mitzvah. Today I'm going to try to better myself in this way and make myself stronger and focus on perfecting this goal that's important for me. And just because you've, until now, for the almost 49 years, this has been difficult for you, tomorrow it's going to be something that you're working on and you can start it again. And just because it's always been like that for you doesn't mean you need to always be stuck there. You can always change. You can always decide, from now on, this is what I'm doing.
Fantastic point. And it's funny because oftentimes when I ask this question to everybody, I'm like, okay, I hope the viewers are going to enjoy what they're going to say, but I take so much from, obviously every guest, but you guys specifically. And this has been an amazing conversation. I barely glanced at this, and that's how I know I enjoyed this. So just thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Taking the time. And hopefully, people who listen to this, if they want to get in touch with you, maybe I'll put your contact somewhere below. And for all the Tiferet alumni, reach out to the people that I'm sitting with right now. 100%. They want to hear from you. Thank you so much. And looking forward to having you again.
Thank you so much.
I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Obviously, as I said, I enjoy every episode. But this one specific, in my opinion, had a lot of practical advice that you guys could take, specifically seminary girls could take with you, whatever stage you are at in your life listening to this episode. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you all so much for the support. And just a little bit of a teaser, in 2 weeks from now, God willing, the next episode is going to be with Rabbi Donnie Kunstler from Yeshiva Torah Shraga on the topic of non-Jewish music and the impact it has in your growth in your year in Israel. That one I actually pre-filmed already, and let me tell you, it's absolutely amazing. So stay tuned. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks, and thank you guys all so much for the support, and we will see you all soon.